Kia ora, Alfred. Thank you for taking time out of your campaign to join us today. How is the campaign going?
Yeah, kia ora Tupe. Well, it's going and it's fast, it's furious. We've had the lockdown and that means we've lost 2.5 months. So we're out there, we're putting out hoardings, flyers. We had a great campaign launch. We had about 260 people come, so there's a lot of energy. And I suppose there's a lot of expectation. This is going to be a close election. So for us, it's important, especially with some of the challenges we've had just of late. It's important for us to get out there and to work hard and to continue to connect with our community.
So a lot of people in your electorate will have the chance to interact with you over this campaign period. Today what we wanted to do was give people a chance to hear about your story and what motivates you and the journey you've been on. So you were the first Cook Islander to enter New Zealand Parliament. Can you tell us a bit about your upbringing and in particular the Pacific values that your parents instilled in you that you carry with you today?
So if I start off with my grandmother, so she was a big part of our upbringing. So my grandmother, my dad was part of 13 children, and so he was the third youngest. And my grandmother was actually half Polish, so her father was Marcus Goldstein, who made his way to the Cook Islands and then married my great-grandmother Tupe Solomon, and so they had one daughter before he passed, and that was my grandmother. So her name was Rita Goldstein. And so when I grew up in Ponsonby, 142 John Street, so first generation of Cook Island descent. And I can remember the values that she taught us. They were really important. I remember one time my dad was saying, come on, we're all going to go down to Point Erin Bars down in Ponsonby. And my grandmother said, no, she doesn't want to go. And then my dad said, no, come on, Mum, you've got to come down. It's good for the kids. There's a swimming pool for the children, another one for the adults, and you know, it's got a tuck shop and it's got a fence. And my grandmother simply said, well, if God wanted us to go to the swimming pool, he would have born us in the swimming pool. You know, and as kids, you sort of don't understand. All you know is that we went to the beach instead of to the pools. But as you grow up, you realise that what my grandmother was doing was giving us, you know, a value principle to live by. In other words, that as Pasifika, actually sometimes we confine to small spaces like swimming pools. We look about education, we look about health, we look about employment. In actual fact, what we should be thinking about is that our DNA of who we are as Pasifika is the whole of the Pacific. The Moana, I mean, we were the greatest navigators through the biggest oceans in the world. And so therefore our vision, our view, and even our values should have that form of expanse, to think that we can do even more than what other people think that is possible of us. And so I grew up with that, always believing the fact is that we could go out and we could do more. And so as a young person, I grew up with that sense that even though my mum was a cleaner, in the days we'd go up and help her on her third cleaning job up at the Chief Post Office or Newton, we were constantly working hard, working smart to get ahead. And so those values were always instilled in us, and also to find out what our true potential was, you know, in life. And so because of that, I became an electrician, and at the same time too played sports, and then also did a theological degree, and then went on to, we were in ministry for 20 years, my wife and I, so my beautiful wife, Mokoena Fuemana, and we got married, we had 4 children, 2 grandchildren, and then we had finished ministry for 20 years, and then we were asked whether we'd be keen to go into politics and Parliament. Now, I never thought that was possible. In fact, I didn't want it at all. And my wife said, look, you got to go to the meeting. And it was at that meeting that they interviewed me and said, well, why do you want to become an MP? And I said, well, I don't. So why are you here? Because my wife told me to. And they laughed, and I said, no, if you see my wife, you'll understand. So they said, tell us about your story. I said, well, construction as an electrician, community development, did a theological degree, was a pastor as well, never studied politics and never been in any political party. You know, and one of them said, well, then you're the perfect candidate. And I said, well, why would you say that? And it's because it's called the House of Representatives. So therefore, if you represent the view and vision and the values of your community, then there's a place for you. And so that's how I ended up in politics, and you know, that's been part of my my backstory.